The Sentinel is known to be reliable, fearless, disciplined, consistent, courageous, motivated, and skillful.
So do what you feel passionate about. Take chances.
All these qualities start from the mind. Your mind can be your worst enemy or your most powerful weapon.
The world becomes your library to help you to become better at your craft.
Is this the dagger?
Learn how to achieve greatness and tap into the Sentinel mindset.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a very, very special edition of the Sentinel Mindset. We're actually going to talk about something that we showcased in Vegas that was a first of its kind. And we have a very special guest on the show, a repeat guest, Mr. Stephen Summerville. Welcome.
Stephen M.
Hey, Stephen M. Summerville.
You listen, you can hear the
There
crowd.
You
I can hear the ovation.
That's just one person walking by, but fair enough.
Exactly.
How are you?
Very good, Steve. How are you doing?
Doing
buddy?
great. Good,
man.
guys. We're talking about protect to protector, although I haven't segued into that yet.
That's right.
What does that mean?
Yeah, protect PTP.
Yeah. Where do you think security professionals and firms such as yourselves at times need to acquire an expert witness? Let me change this podcast around.
Well, I love it.
Hold on. I'm uncomfortable
Who's
right
asking
now.
the
You wanna sit over
questions?
here?
Yeah.
Yeah, they say who those asking the questions
Yes.
in control. Go ahead, Steve.
Why does a law firm, why would you at times need to secure a law firm to represent your firm or the actions of your guards or your management or your supervisors? And under what circumstances that might be required?
Well, I can tell you, Steve, from experience, that over our career within Ontario and servicing many clientele, we have in the past been part of lawsuits, things that we were directly involved with or things that we were not directly involved with at all.
Right.
And even if we were doing everything by the book, by the letter, by the T, we were still pulled into these lawsuits. And when we were pulled into these lawsuits, I remember very at the early years when this first started kind of coming into place. And when I say getting pulled into lawsuits, someone will be like, oh man, Sentinel must have been doing a lot of things and screwing things up. No, you could be doing things properly.
Right.
And you're still going to get pulled into something, and that's another episode. However, my first exposure in a discovery, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know what a discovery is, Steve, can I have you just give the justice of the definition of a discovery?
Sure. In Ontario courts, if you are the subject of scrutiny, i.e. litigation, if you're being sued,
Yes.
what you'll go through is precursor and is required as a part of the lawsuit process is to go through an examination of all the material and all the evidence that may be relevant to the court case. So what they're looking at therefore, you'd sit in an informal room, such as like this or an office, whatever the case might be. You'd usually be sitting with your lawyer, the opposing side would be sitting their lawyer, and the lawyer who's on for the other side, in this case would likely be the plaintiff lawyer, the person suing you, will be asking you questions to see, discovering what it is you know or don't know, and what's the true information that they might be able to have. You're bound by law to provide all the relevant and truthfulness. You're under oath for this, or affirmation for this, and you must provide enough material to be able to identify issues of liability.
Right.
And issues of liability, and just sort of jump into this quick podcast for today, could look at the issues of training, policies, procedures, expectations, briefings, debriefings, and the requirements of the job and what the contract requirements were of that job to see whether or not your company has addressed issues of liability or created it or caused it.
Right.
So one of the greatest foundations of success is a written report documentation from our people to be able to show all the elements of the process called duty of care, reasonable conduct that you would offer to afford, for other people, safety for yourself and others, and any equipment that might be used. Was it used in accordance with, safety provisions? Was it used with criminal code considerations? Any legislation governing the areas of security provision in this country, let alone this province?
Right.
And did you do it according to the way it was expected to be done? So when you have a strong piece of documentation, strong report, strong file, strong occurrence report, that starts to identify all the steps, then the balances, if you will, pros and cons of what your people did or did not do. I'm going to offer real quickly why this podcast is important is we'll talk about those processes to protect you, protect yourself in the hot seat.
Yes.
Where good people have never really had the experience of being scrutinized by a sage lawyer, by a person who's very skilled in communications, who are attempting to discredit you and display credibility. And you're familiar with the questions that are about to come. the process that you can perform well in, and to meet those tests, so likely where that aspects of allegations will go away. That's a good day of the office on a Friday afternoon.
100%. And to your original question to us, which you gave such an excellent definition of discovery.
Thank you. You prepped me. prior to
Yeah,
that.
what I can say is that when I was first involved in the discovery, I guess the lawyers completely dismantled me to the size of a particle of dust. And they asked me probably 200 questions just around notebook taking and who was the person that taught it and show us the policy of this and show me this. And very, very, very easily, I was basically disqualified to the point where it made me recognize we got to make some changes.
Right.
So it was an excellent educational opportunity for the organization. But with that being said, 100%, I think it's almost to say if you're in business, to think that you will never be in a situation where you could be sued, I think it'd be foolish for someone to think that. It's almost like saying, I'm not going to get insurance because I'm never going to get into a car accident.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, or I don't have to wear a seatbelt because I'm a safe driver.
Right.
And there was a time that paradigm had to be legislated in.
That's right. I remember lots of drives back in the 80s without
Right.
seatbelts, right?
Yeah.
And my brother falling out of the car. That's another story.
Yeah.
But anyways, with
That's right.
that being said, what's so amazing about today is something that we released in Las Vegas,
Right.
and I've lost track of time, was that December. And
week of
we
December.
released this to the Executive Protection Forum hosted by Byron Rogers,
Right.
where we had to see industry executive protection professionals all across the world get together in one room with speakers all across the world get together. One of them, Steve, you being one of the main presenters.
Right.
And the topic was Protect the Protector. Now, what exactly is Protect the Protector? Well, the forum that we went to was regarding executive protection. And basically, it was a conference of information, okay, and networking. And we released something which everyone's going to get a chance to see after this podcast. Right. We released something that for those in attendance, for the professionals around the world, have never seen before. Okay,
Right.
It may have been talked to, but in
In
conversation,
private sector security or executive protection, it's not provided. Now, for law enforcement, for a few selected few, it is.
Right.
You do have expert witness programs, but that doesn't raise the bar with the ability to articulate under scrutiny and tough situations of stress to a level where you're required to. The opportunity for lawsuits, North America-wide, states, Canada, is extreme prevalent. And what kind of shocked us or surprised us there in Vegas back in the first week of December 2020 was that the room of experts had limited, if any, experience in having to face that scrutiny in a courtroom. And we're looking at certain worldwide events. We're looking at, Rittenhouse, the young gentleman was charged with, with murder in the States, and we're talking about the ability for self-defense, et cetera. And that put a lot of people on the ready thinking, wow, I wouldn't want to go through that. And funny enough, despite being very, very well, trained in being able to provide a level of executive protection, I don't know what I don't know when it comes to being litigated. You're treated, as Brian Rogers said, like a leper.
right?
You're churned on. And I'm just dealing, if I may segue this new case right now, and I won't get into the names because of confidentiality, but this being a Friday here in January, I'm currently involved in a preliminary inquiry for a murder trial. I'm facing two security guards who are working in healthcare in Toronto. And as a result of their actions in restraining a patient who unfortunately died, they've been charged with criminal negligence causing death and manslaughter. And much to their shock and despair, after they were charged, they were summarily fired by their employer. They're left to their own device. And now they're starting to go through all the levels of scrutiny with policy, procedure, and the ability to testify for themselves.
Wow, on their own.
On their own.
Okay, so kind of just for the layman, for those because we are going pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
I think we should just maybe lay out beginning to end kind of what we did. You had mentioned Protect the Protector. Kind of it was, this program was designed, and we decided to test it internally first. The way we did it is we took some of our top agents that work in close protection and executive protection. Seasoned experience.
Not new hires.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Right.
And they all had an abundance of experience. They were put through a hard skill training for the morning, essentially, for the first part of the session. And it was by design. It was meant to prime them on the hard skill, on how to protect against sharp-edged weapons, to create distance on an active attacker while they're protecting the principal. We then segued into another portion of the training where they actually were put through a scenario. When they were put through the scenario, They had no idea what was going to happen. They were just given very clear
filmed,
instruction.
a videotape scenario.
Yes, and again, what's key is the film. There, from their standpoint, again, thank them all for going through it so willingly and with such a great heart. Is we kind of film everything. So this was just, we got some cameras around. They didn't know that us filming the scenario, it was going to be surprise surveillance on how they handled it. And this wasn't game tape to see how good their kung fu was in handling the attack. This was to be scrutinized because at the tail end of that scenario, which Constantine played a general manager of a 5-star hotel, and we
played that role quite well.
Yeah, it was actually
too.
really good. Let's cue the highlight reel of Constantine.
Hope you didn't catch my eyes rolling.
We could do a whole highlight of you. Hey, I'm the general manager.
Right.
But after that was done, everyone was instructed to do adequate reporting. There was an incident that happened that involved the principal. There was an attack, and it was.
And if I can interject,
Yes.
sorry, my apologies. And we're going to jump to what happened afterwards. But people who wrote the reports are experienced executive protection professionals in this province. And I'm not putting it out there, this word, I'd suggest they're elite in what they do. But they have never met the challenge and that requirement of that challenge to any report they've ever submitted or prepared before. And they were basing their ability to write a report in previous experience until they had the other experience, which we're about to
That's
talk
key.
about.
I mean, thank you for saying that because it's the 100% they're elite and how they do everything. They were given the instruction to do this report.
And I write reports all the time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they
Easy peasy,
and they wrote a
PCK.
report. And after doing the report,
I paid the respect it was due.
yes,
Or didn't I?
yes. I mean, to that point,
Right.
but they didn't know what they didn't know.
That's right. I've
So
heard that before.
It gets submitted to our office. A couple of days later, each of these agents was surprised with an email, and they were provided a subpoena to show up in a Sentinel courtroom, essentially. Okay, and this was a courtroom that we basically had a discovery. And if you don't know the definition of discovery, rewind back about 15 minutes.
Right.
okay?
Right.
And in this discovery, they got a chance to sit across Mr. Steve Summerville. Okay, Steve, if you can kind of, and so I'll just kind of begin to end. They were not prepared for that. They were told that the night before. They showed up the next day, and this was not to see game tape of their, of their good kung fu.
Right.
This was surveillance footage, highly scrutinized, accompanied by their report, good or bad, and facing the question from yourself who would represent their prosecution.
Yeah, and not being self-serving, I think, for most people, and I think to a degree, it was an epiphany for them.
Absolutely.
They weren't prepared for what happened, and I think most of our elite guards imploded through the process.
Yeah, it's fair to say.
A couple shut down.
Yeah.
A couple in a training scenario in front of their peers and their supervisors. Some of them started to get angry.
Yes.
And they confessed they were getting angry, frustrated, not necessarily at me, well, probably, but also the questions that they were not able to respond to. And it was not identified in the report. It was omitted.
Yes.
It was not written about. Yet prior to being asked the question, they admitted that anything that's relevant and important should be a part of the document. Why wasn't it? They had no answer to that. I'll even go one step further. A person a little bit later on in his testimony, he even actually admitted to admitting perjury, lying and saying, yeah, the jig is up.
Yes. And again, why that's key is because of the scrutiny that they were placed under.
Right.
Again, it was, and I want to be clear, it was a no-win scenario. No one was intended to fly through this and to be, getting great applause.
I'd agree.
Yeah, kind of because they were they were set up, they were primed, they were only told piecemeal information.
They were set up to believing that they had experience and credibility and experience that they previously had. They'd never had faced a test like that before.
Yes.
So they went in being confident, maybe a little bit cocky, maybe a little overconfident, thinking, hey, I know this stuff. I'm a seasoned pro. Bring it on, baby.
Yep.
Until they were finally met with the first opening parry of shots, which is verbal attempts to de-escalate and discredit you. And a lot of people had no experience in how to respond.
And that was by design. We
was.
purposely manipulated it to deceive them to thinking it was A when it was B that they were being tested. So they had not been tested because they were thinking that the advancements coming in front of them when it was totally behind. I'll give you a kind of a comparable. We tested them. This is what's cool about it. It was amazing just to partake in it. But we talk about the 3 little pigs. They were tested, by the big bad wolf.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube. There's probably a video, right?
Right.
Well, it probably is, yeah.
Straw, sticks, or bricks. So in theory, we kind of created our own climate to test them in an area that they weren't tested before.
Right.
So,
And let's take it back to Las Vegas for a minute, please. Season pro, there's about 80 or 90 people there, and a lot of people viewing online in the portal. I was shocked. I was shocked the amount of people who approached us and saying, wow, What a change. What a change. Never been. And they've already identified they like to participate in a full program in the future. They like to go through that. Despite seeing some people and challenges, they want to face that test. Would raise the bar for that level of professionalism in this industry. So Protect the Protector is just that, giving the protectors a chance to enhance and season their skill sets to be taken on by adversaries and foes that they've not been prepared for.
Yeah, and
This is one thing that, sorry to interject,
Yeah.
Mike. This is one thing that lacks in our industry. I mean, we've got physical skills, we have hiring skills, we have articulation skills, but we don't give our people, generally speaking as an industry, we don't give our people the required skills to protect themselves in arenas that they've never had any experience in before. And it's a little too late, I thank you. I'm humbled by what Constantine said, what an eye-opener it was for him. He went, process of change. But when you are now facing the scrutiny, your name is on what's called a statement of claim. You're being sued. It's too late in the game to go through that deficiency and say, I wish I could go back and to review it again. You need skill sets, just like skill sets in how to restrain somebody. You need skill sets in how to articulate in extremely stressful situations what you did, what you considered, and ultimately what you did. That's Protect the Protector, my friend.
Yeah, and what's amazing, I mean, the why, the battle beyond the battle, right?
Yeah.
You're looking after your principal. You're concerned with protecting them.
You're right.
Someone comes up to them, and it seems like a perceived threat. You straight arm them. You, in some way, cut through. You thump and dump.
So let's take a look at the program what we're offering, Protect the Protector. Look to go to market soon, if I may say.
Yes.
Here's the thing. If you really want to test the merits of your skills, if you really want to take a look at how efficient you can be, I'm going to challenge you you might want to expose yourself to some training that you've never seen or participated in before. And it's one thing to testify, you see something. That's not the same thing as testifying in an event where you are now the person facing the scrutiny. You're being charged. You're facing these horrendous allegations of abuse and hurting someone and causing injury maliciously. And you're going to be labeled. And that in itself is difficult because they're going to portray you, sir, as a thug, as a very, very unkind, unsympathetic, non-empathetic human being who had an agenda to hurt another person. Yeah. And with that, there's a plethora of zeros after a lawsuit to show the negligence aspect.
Negligence, no duty of care, all of the above.
You got it. So what we need is give people an experience to write an event, an experience that they were in. That's the second component of this.
Yes.
And to understand that the ability to write a fruitful and a very meaningful and detailed occurrence is just not something you choose to do. You need experience to what is relevant, what's applicable. And once you have that experience, wow, I've gone through an experience like that, never again will I get caught. This is the means, this is the base we provide that people a means to protect the protector, to raise the bar so clients seeking to provide an elite professional to their events and their teams realize that these agents, these specialists, do so also have a background protecting the protector, which is protecting your clients' assets as well. And I go, they're so bold, is a lot of times clients don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're hiring. And just because they think they're hiring a company, an executive protection company that provides skill sets, doesn't mean they have an actual ability to articulate what that company does.
I mean, because the protector could be a problem maker, right? That's what you're saying.
That could be your problem.
They could be the problem.
It could be the problem.
You were really nice. You said 80 or 90 people in that room in Vegas. Based on average mass size of each individual, it's more like 130, 150.
You noticed that.
There are some, these aren't your average
These were
person.
Very well put together human beings.
Yes, hard skill trained at any moment could protect a good number of people.
A lot of former Marines.
Yes.
A lot of first responders. That's right. People, unique skill sets who, I applaud with respect, conceded later, never had that experience. Thank you, brother, for bringing that to me. What an eye-opener.
That was amazing. It was amazing for us to see that when you had presented this, this kind of program that was put together here in little old humble Canada in Toronto and brought to Vegas and all the lights, how receptive they were to it. Because they realized, how valuable it is to them. No one has ever said this. I mean, if anything, we know within the industry, we applaud the machoism. We applaud, what would you say, the Terminator in that protector. This guy's this guy, he could do this. And you're preparing them from a totally different battle, the battle beyond the battle.
That's right.
Okay.
The battle beyond the battle, which you're involved in, and you might be going out with limited support. Is there a presumption in the industry that if I working for your company today and I get in trouble and I get criminally charged, that you're going to retain a lawyer for me? Where's that in your employment contract written, sir? Because that experience, and I mentioned with these two healthcare security officers, they're on their own.
Yeah.
Completely on their own. And matter of fact, in the last 24 hours, I've been retaining 4 additional files, 2 involving fatal police shootings, or even with lawyers, speak to lawyers who, upon the conclusion of the conversation, retained me, didn't realize the scope and magnitude of questions that they could ask. So we actually had a chance to speak to lawyers saying, here's the information you need to go after. Here's what you got to look at. Here's what you need to promote the value of your, either defense or the areas of your allegations.
Can you share what the solution is to that? So then how does a company have something set up? I mean, in this scenario.
Yeah,
we're
real
talking
briefly,
about-
sure.
Yeah.
Starts off with policies and procedures.
Yes.
Respecting, of course, the actions and anticipation of your guards or your agent's duties, followed by the training to support that. You need the escalation training, how to talk people down, to be able to create that rapport. You need physical skills training, restraint training, and you need a template. I call it a policy in terms of use of force applications, the duty of care component. And we should also be able to categorically show that all your agents have some means of training that can be verified through a testing mechanism and de-escalation skills. That is the scope of scrutiny. And if you start to cover all those boxes, check, I dare say under oath that you're really limiting the scope or threshold of litigation, not only for you, but for your company and all your agents.
It's like layers of defense. Okay, so
It
when you
is a
say
layer of
that,
defense.
I mean, okay, that's the content, but we learned this from you. That content also needs to be court defensible.
It does.
Right?
It does, and make certain that your trainers, whoever companies out there watching this, make certain your trainers go through that litmus test of being able to be authentic in what they
Yes.
provide, and to make certain that the materials provided will stand that test. And is it relevant? Relevant to what? So when you talk about, I've got a one-day training package that I provide and that's sufficient, what are you comparing that to? You might want to speak to a couple of law firms. Why don't you speak to your insurance underwriter or insurance agent to find out what training programs might start to get you a discount in insurance? And if you're able to meet these core competencies, and one place I look at is not being a private entrepreneur, but why don't you take a look at the Public Services Health and Safety Association, PSHSA. Mm-hmm. And for those who are not familiar with that in this province, that is the educational wing of the Ontario Ministry of Labour. On their website, they've identified, they've published an actual record as to what they say is mandatory in terms of security provision, and they have identified a series of checks and balances. And if any company out there has those checks and balances, you're well on your way to defending scrutiny. If not, you're in a position to might want to adjust and reconsider and fix problems before they become a huge problem for you.
Look, at the end of the day, Steve, what it comes down to, and Mike, that we have two audiences here. We have companies that are providing services, whether it be in CP, EP, whatever it is,
Right.
or security. And then you also have individuals that are Lone Rangers. And a Lone Ranger, for those that don't know, are people that kind of self-represent.
I got a guy.
Yeah, I got a guy. Self-represent, and they're on the scene. In fact, Lone Rangers are probably the most at danger of protection when it comes to themselves, protect the protector. But what we're talking...
Because of zero accountability.
Zero
But that's-
accountability,
That's
that's
another
right.
podcast.
Here's a question a lot of clients, I'd suggest, put to prospective companies such as yourselves. Whatever is you're providing me for guards, here's how this for question. Could you provide me, please, a copy of your agent's a recent report? I'd like to see in terms of how they articulate. I'd like to see a recent report they've submitted may have. And if you need to redact certain areas for confidentiality, great. But I'm looking at the scope of your guards' communication skills and how well articulate they are. That's what I'm looking to buy, sir. I mean, the physical skills, I got that. That's checked off with a record of certification. But I want to see the agents working for your company, ABC Security or Sentinel Security, whoever it might be. Can you give me a copy of their written skills, please, for reports and files? That's what I wish to assess. I really want to compare apples to oranges. I'm trying to see how communicative and how articulate your agents really are.
Yeah, I mean, that's proof in the pudding. You're asking, again, this isn't happening, but you're asking for a higher standard,
Yeah.
a higher threshold.
Yeah.
Going to what you're saying, let's speak about the Lone Ranger. And this is to kind of caution anyone who wants to get into protection. Why do they exist? They exist because people just want money.
Right.
I'm going to say it right now.
that's
Okay?
mercenary.
And the Lone Ranger, who maybe at one point was working for a company, got contracted to look after a client, realizes they're paying X amount of dollars to company ABC, and this could be maybe half an X if it went just directly to them, because they're only getting a portion.
Right.
So they somehow get friendly with the client, and they make it's either propositioned by the client who
It's
wants to save a
familiarity.
dollar.
Yeah. Familiarity,
on the
not
familiarity.
competency.
Yeah, and this is where it kind of can be a slippery slope, because the client, the actual principal himself, could say, "Look, I'm paying X amount of dollars. I could give half X to you directly.
Right.
I save." That lone wolf now, who's in the making, says, "Okay, that's great for me. I'm actually going to get a little bit more than when if I got paid by the company." The danger is you're on your own.
That's right.
You're totally on your own. You're
That's
covered
right.
by nothing.
That's
Okay?
right. And when you're on your own, you're probably thinking at the same token right now, you just came with a good accomplishment and nothing's going to happen to you. But what if you're with your client and some type of harm happens to them, and then they decide right now to come after you.
Okay, so let's quote our good friend Byron Rogers, who spoke to us. We had many conversations with him about this, and he used a very powerful word. He said, if you fall under this type of scrutiny based on your actions on a detail, you will become a leper. Okay, and he said that companies won't touch you.
Right.
Actual details, the commanding officer of any detail won't bring you on the team. You know, agents that you worked with before will be like, I don't know if we're going to bring him because he has this pending lawsuit going on right now.
Yeah.
He's a risk. And so someone who has their entirely livelihood, it doesn't matter, Steve, how experienced they are.
No.
That one incident, even if it's just an accusation of, is enough to destroy their career.
Exactly.
Not being self-serving, Mike, but yesterday I was retained by a defendant law firm who are in the business of defending litigation. In this case, the defending security action. How my name came to him is he read my name in a report that was submitted against his firm that he had to defend, and he indicated that that was one of the reasons why he settled suits earlier, was because of the quality of the report, the documentation, the written document.
Yes.
And he realized that if there was any means for me to assist, he wanted to get me on board right from the get-go. So written documentation can also support your credibility and your efficiency to provide the best level of protection for your client. It also raises the bar because people who are able to articulate create a reputation within the industry. And that starts to reduce in claims, that starts to reduce in injuries, negative press, if you will. And these are some of the areas that I won't mention some of the higher end epsilon clients that you guys have, but I would think you'd go on the record by saying your clients cannot afford bad press.
Not at all.
They cannot receive accusations of people being dragged out by the scruff of their neck and being abused verbally or physically. That kills the credibility of any entity.
Yeah, they can't afford it. They don't want to be affiliated with
or
it.
associated with it. In no way, shape, or form.
In no way.
So our people who can take a protect or serve program above and beyond the physical skills, policy, procedures, they now are being given the experience to articulate after an experience that they've been in to a level of expertise and elite that they've never experienced before.
Now, again, as a parallel, when we were in Miami, remember those warm days?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
just the bliss of Miami.
Yeah.
We saw a gauntlet. We saw hard skill training. It was right in front of us. All of us can be like, yeah, a gauntlet. We can see the value of it. This is amazing. I get tested. This type of the protector gauntlet, whole other type of thing, you know. And to me, we had some hesitancy going into America, thinking, let's see if they're going to really like this message.
They embraced us,
you know, but they exactly. I mean, you beat me to it. It was good news. It was gospel to them. They realized like, we need this. There was business owners, some there who sold their company for about 100 million or more, and they were literally like kind of hanging off Steve, saying like, "Look, we need this, and we need to do this in our company. Our agents need to go through this gauntlet.
Right. This is what we want.
Yes.
That's right.
This is what we need. This is what we've not seen."
Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, protect the protector. Something that you're going to watch right now. I'm telling you, have an open mind because it will change your thinking. You may think you know it all. You may think you've been through it all, but you have not been through the hands of an expert witness.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
And I say this, I want to throw in there, you know, it's easy when you watch this video, just get off your armchair and you know, it's easy to judge the individuals going through it. We want to applaud them. Look, we're keeping them nameless and faceless for the point of the exercise. They did an incredible job. They are very experienced. They did the best that they could with what they had.
Agreed.
What they had.
And we also, I should mention this in closing, we did a debrief afterwards. You know, and after out of the sight and off view of the camera, they said, "Wow,
Right.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for that." And I thought I was. And even though I had the benefit of watching my colleagues go before me, I wasn't prepared with the questions you asked me. And what a learning process. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we was cheers, chink our glasses
Right.
or pop glasses, and it was a process where people not only embraced, they got true value out of it, and it enhanced their skill sets for going forward.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and you won't gain from it by watching it. When you go through it is when you really get tested.
That's
And
right.
if anybody would like more information or is really interested in what they're about to watch right now, definitely reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to share more information, to set something up with your firm, and kind of go from there. Gentlemen, any closing words before we get to the segment?
Well, see, first I want Steve to end because you're great for a soundbite. And
I'm
this is-
usually
this-
very
know,
timid to talk.
we had talked about this, and again,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of Steve's experience is, and he has been. I mean, you're in virtual court these days.
Yeah.
Almost every single day.
Yeah, I
And it's
literally
for-
just left my home watching virtual murder trials. I said the prelim, and so got out of that mindset of the court, listening to people questions.
not Netflix, virtual
Yeah,
murder
this is-
trials. Hear that, guys?
It'll take
Virtual.
place
This is
on
so.
the
This is
go.
like this is real. again, they say if you want to walk through a minefield, follow someone. And I think in policing, with your experience, decades of it, you've seen police highly scrutinized, police being charged for murder, police going to prison based on their actions. So if you work in protection, you work in security, okay, there's something to learn here. To think that it is partial and that scrutiny is only reserved for those in blue would be a complete...
That would be a loss.
That would be an oversight.
Open
We
your
can learn
mind,
from
open
that.
your hearts, watch this upcoming presentation, Protect Protector, and see where we'll take you.
In an effort to prepare our EP agents for the battle beyond the battle, a hard skill training primed our EP team before being surprised with a simple scenario. The next week, all were subpoenaed to appear in a mock court discovery.
I wasn't negligent, but I didn't put him in.
Well, hold on for 1 second here. You're telling me that my client created a threat, and you did a complete fulsome report to the best of your ability, did you not?
To the best of my ability.
You know what I'm going to suggest to you, sir? That you are now saying that my client threatened your client to be convenient for you to justify the actions he used against him. You broke my client's arm, and now you're suddenly materializing this concept of threat that never appeared in your notes.
I can't answer that question.
How is that competent? You say you're a competent professional. Is it competent to lay your hands on the public yet you don't know your authorities?
I don't know how to answer that question, sir.
Well, do you feel you're competent? A competent person should be able to answer that question?
Well, the way you're asking it, I don't know.
Should a
how to
competent
answer.
person, well, do you think, sir, requires a degree or a law degree to be able to say if you put your hands on somebody, what's your authority?
Well,
So you see the placement, you push him against the wall.
I didn't.
Well, how did he throw himself against the
I
wall?
blocked him.
You blocked him.
I didn't. I used.
You're a master of semantics.
Can
my
you
client.
see that I went to crack his
Did
arm?
you offer
Doesn't
any
show that.
assistance? Are you going to answer
No, I
the
did
question?
not. No, I did
You
not.
didn't think
No,
it was
I did
carry
not.
on? Yet you didn't provide that detail in your report.
No, I did not.
Why would you do that? Or not do that?
At that time, it was something that I recall later on.
What did you say to my client at the time you physically touched them? So that's an admission?
Yeah.
Third such admission.
Sure.
Is that competent to exclude that relevant point to a report?
No, it's not competent at all.
Yet you've identified you're a competent security guard. 15 years in this industry.
Yeah.
What did you say to my client at the moment, the tipping point you were applying force?
I didn't say it.
You didn't say anything?
No.
Do you realize my client suffered a broken arm?
I didn't know this.
You didn't realize that?
Not at the time.
I'm going to take you to your report, sir. I instructed my client to keep moving as I restrained the individual who claimed his arm to be broken.
Yeah, it is.
So you weren't lying when you submitted this report.
No.
So you're lying now. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Are you suggesting this report, this is false?
No, it's correct.
So what you've said under oath right now is false?
Yeah, it is false, actually, yeah.
Wow. Are you familiar with the word perjury, sir?
I am.
What is perjury?
Lying under oath.
Lying under oath, which it appears you've just done. You realize there's a criminal consequence for that, correct?
I do, yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by Executive Protection Lifestyle Canada. Make sure to drop by next week and don't forget to subscribe.